Many things about the video game industry have changed over the last 40 years, but one thing that's always remained in vogue is the eternal rivalry between competing consoles. Some of you will be able to recall fierce playground arguments over the topic of Nintendo versus Sega, and this year we've seen the animosity between Microsoft and Sony played out in the courtroom. So not much has changed at all, really. If the same game is available on multiple consoles, there's therefore going to be a debate over which version is the best via comparisons of things like frame rates and resolutions. But an easy way to swing this debate is if one console's version has content not available on other platforms. Console-exclusive content is a slippery subject that usually comes with accusations of withheld story material and competitive restrictions that often serve to only further divide an already fragmented community. Regardless of its dubious morality though, the strategy of using exclusive content has proven to be an effective one that shows no signs of stopping. I'm Peter from TripleJump featuring Dante from the Devil May Cry series, and here are 10 multi-platform games with console-exclusive content. Number 10. Viewtiful Joe. The GameCube is remembered fondly by many, and for good reason, as it boasted a library that was simply brimming with absolute gems. But for much of its lifespan, Nintendo's little box that could struggled to gain much traction, a problem that Capcom sought to help rectify by announcing a slate of games that would be launching as GameCube exclusives. Resident Evil 4, PN3, Killer 7, Dead Phoenix, and Viewtiful Joe. Dubbed the Capcom 5, things weren't quite what they seemed. Only PN3 would actually remain exclusive, Dead Phoenix wasn't released at all, and the other 3 games were all soon to be ported to other platforms. And perhaps adding insult to injury, to help boost its sales, Viewtiful Joe included an extra bonus in its PlayStation 2 version. Sorry, GameCube. Players could unlock Dante from Devil May Cry as a playable character. And you thought I was just joking at the beginning of the video, didn't you? Well, you're wrong, so there. Viewtiful Joe may not have been the source of the meme that saw Dante's moniker appended to video game titles like his name was Knuckles, that would be Shin Megami Tensei 3, but it was one of the earliest examples of it actually being true, and the silver-haired demon hunter would become a fixture in the series whenever it graced Sony's hardware. Number 9. Batman Arkham Asylum. The Dark Knight may claim to be an incorruptible symbol of justice, but it turns out that not even he is immune to the allure of a good money-making tactic, as evidenced by the release of his stellar 2009 outing, Batman Arkham Asylum. Only available to the PS3 version of the game was a pack of downloadable Joker missions. Not missions where players fight against the Joker mind, but rather missions where they got to play as the Joker, complete with his own bag of tricks including razor-sharp playing cards and wind-up teeth. It was a unique change of pace from the mantle of the Caped Crusader, and something that was missing in other versions of the game. This trend of exclusivity continued with the game's sequels, as both Arkham Origins and Arkham Knight came with bonus DLC, including extra skins and challenge missions, but only for those who bought the PlayStation versions. Sony fans weren't the only ones getting in on the fun, however, as the Wii U received the Armored edition of Arkham City, featuring a unique armored battlesuit for Batman, allowing players to enhance their attacks during combat. Unfortunately though, this version made very little splash in terms of sales, becoming the game that the Wii U owners deserved, but not the one they needed. Number 8. Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. Ubisoft, and in particular Assassin's Creed, is no stranger to proudly marketing console exclusives, even if it remains debatable whether or not they actually understand what the word exclusive means. However, they may have ruffled a few feathers with the release of Assassin's Creed 4. If you bought the game on PlayStation 3 or 4, you would also be able to play through an additional storyline starring Evelyn, the main character from the spin-off Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation. Initially, there was some confusion, as one advertisement claimed the DLC would only be a timed exclusive, but Ubisoft stepped up to make things worse for themselves by confirming it would be a permanent exclusive to the PlayStation platforms. In Initially, there was some outrage from Microsoft, Nintendo, and PC players who felt that important story content was being withheld from their versions of the game. Costumes and side missions are one thing, but an original story featuring a beloved character from the previous installment was a bit of a bridge too far for some. These concerns ended up being largely unfounded, however, as upon release, the Evelyn story was found to clock in at only about an hour, with recycled gameplay from the main game, and no major storyline ramifications. Assassin's Creed, more like Assassin's Greed. Got him. Number 7. Several EA Sports titles. Several means it's a wildcard entry! If any company out there could be accused of using less than savoury practices to make money off a game, odds are that Electronic Arts would be a prime suspect. But this entry is actually about a rather unique case. In the early 2000s, EA signed an agreement with Nintendo that would allow them to use some of the Big N's classic characters in their own games, and this deal manifested in a trio of sports games released in 2005. NBA Street V3, SSX on Tour, and Fight Night Round 2. All three released on Xbox, PlayStation 2, and GameCube. Both NBA Street and SSX featured the Mushroom Kingdom trio of Mario, Luigi, and Peach as playable characters, exclusive to the GameCube version. But Fight Night did something rather different. It included a fully playable ROM of Super Punch-Out as a bonus minigame. Beating Punch-Out would in turn unlock that game's version of Little Mac as a playable boxer in the Fight Night roster. It was a rather unique pull for a guest character at the time, even if Little Mac's three-dimensional countenance was slightly horrifying to look at, and one that made the GameCube version of Fight Night Round 2 a real knockout. Yes, thank you. Number 6. Shovel Knight. Shovel Knight has certainly made quite a convincing argument for itself as one of the greatest triumphs in indie game history, and by now it's been released on just about every video game console known to man. Windows and Mac, Wii U and Switch, the PlayStation 3, 4 and Vita, and even Amazon Fire TV all have their own version of the beloved retro throwback, but not all of these versions are created equal. The PlayStation and Xbox builds each have their own unique hidden boss. The PlayStation version featured the God of War himself, Kratos, who has a long history of showing up to throw hands in games like Mortal Kombat, Soul Calibur, and even Fortnite. Xbox and Windows, on the other hand, let players face off against none other than the Battletoads. The clear winner, though, is the version on Nintendo systems, including support for amiibo figures, specifically a series of Shovel Knight amiibo produced just for the game that will unlock special challenge stages. They also unlocked a 2-player co-op mode only available on these consoles, though thankfully the mode was later added to the other versions. Speaking of games that make use of small plastic toys, number 5, Starlink Battle for Atlas. The Toys to Life craze was a very interesting and, for some, profitable time in the gaming industry. Every major company was trying to get a slice of the little plastic pie. Nintendo, Activision, Disney, and even Lego all tried their hand at selling little figures to gamers, with varying degrees of success. Though a bit late to the game, even Ubisoft threw their own hat into the ring with the release of Starlink Battle for Atlas. You might be forgiven for not knowing that Starlink was even released on multiple platforms, as the Nintendo Switch version ended up being pretty much the only one worth talking about. Exclusive to Nintendo's system was the inclusion of characters from the Star Fox franchise, and not merely as simple guest characters, but fully integrated into the game's plot and cutscenes, complete with their own story arc not found in other versions of the game. This also meant that the Starlink starter set for Switch, try saying that 5 times fast, included a compatible ship figurine based on the Star Fox team's R-Wing ships as seen in-game. And given the relative drought of new releases the Star Fox series has been through, this ended up being one of the coolest pieces of merchandise the franchise has received recently, if not ever. Number 4. Marvel's Avengers. Oh, Marvel's Avengers, proof that truly no one is too big to fail. The video game equivalent of a summer superhero blockbuster was a bit of a bungled mess right out of the gate. Before launch, Crystal Dynamics announced their plans to continue supporting the game with additional characters, which just so happened to include the addition of Spider-Man, but only if you were playing the PS4 version. On the one hand, this does make sense. The movie rights for Spider-Man were owned by Sony, and the wall crawler had long had a close association as a sort of unofficial mascot for the PlayStation brand. But on the other hand, it's Spider-Man, one of the most popular superheroes of all time, a character that most people probably would have paid extra for, but he was locked out from most platforms on which the game was available. The worst part of it all is that Spidey wasn't even actually added to the game until more than a year after its release, a point long after most people had stopped playing it, and long enough that many thought he'd just been cancelled altogether. In the end, the only exclusive content the PS4 version got was yet another unfulfilled promise. Number 3. Street Fighter X Tekken. Capcom is no stranger to, shall we say, controversial practices regarding add-on content for their games. Incomplete modes, on-disc DLC, overpriced turtle costumes, and more have tarnished their once sterling reputation among fans in recent years. Street Fighter X Tekken, that is how it's pronounced, was the first of a planned 2-game series pitting Capcom's Street Fighters against the cast of Namco's Tekken series, developed by Capcom and emulating the style of Street Fighter. The crossover did end up making headlines, but in a bad way, when it was announced that the PlayStation 3 version would feature not 1, not 2, but 5 exclusive playable characters. Kuro and Toro, the mascots for the PlayStation brand in Japan, make some amount of sense, but Mega Man and Pac-Man, the most famous characters from the 2 competing companies, were also locked to the console, as well as the frankly baffling inclusion of Cole McGrath from the Infamous series. This didn't sit well with anyone, as Xbox and PC players were angry over missing out on crucial content, while Sony fans found the characters a bit too weird for their liking. It was just another nail in the coffin for a game that seemed snake-bit from the beginning, and probably part of the reason that its Namco-developed sequel has seemed to remain stuck in purgatory for eternity. Number 2. Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing. Sonic the Hedgehog certainly enjoys a good race, which is fitting for the fastest creature alive, and far be it from him not to invite a few friends along for the ride. Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing was released for the Wii, Xbox 360, and PlayStation 3, and it actually made use of some special features from multiple consoles. On the Wii, players had the option to play as Mii characters. Yippee! Similarly, the Xbox 360 version included Xbox avatars in the same role. Yippee again! Oh, but wait, there's more, as it also featured Banjo and Kazooie as an exclusive racer. That's right, for the first time on this list, it was the Xbox that got the best version. Even if it was the nuts and bolts version of Banjo, it's still something. The game eventually got a sequel, Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed, which conspicuously dropped Sega from the title, possibly due to the fact that the PC version received 7 additional characters from Steam games, including such luminaries as Football Manager and Team Fortress. And yet the biggest question still remains. If Sonic is so fast, why does he have to use a car to race? Is it some kind of handicap so everyone else has a fair chance? But then why didn't he have a car in Sonic R? These are the questions that keep me up at night. And number 1, Soul Calibur 2. The best kinds of console exclusives are the ones where everybody gets something good. Released at the height of the three-pronged war between the GameCube, Xbox, and PS2, Soul Calibur 2 became a hit with fans of all three by giving each console its own unique playable character. The GameCube version was still widely considered the winner though for its inclusion of Link from the Legend of Zelda series, making this the first time he'd ever been seen outside of a first-party Nintendo game. As for the other versions, Xbox players got to play as Spawn, the classic comic book character created by Todd McFarlane, while the PS2 was largely seen as the weakest link for its inclusion of Heihachi Mishima from Tekken, Soul Calibur's sister series. Not as exciting, right? I mean, both games already included Yoshimitsu. This actually wasn't supposed to be the case, however, as the original plan instead of Heihachi was to include Cloud Strife from Final Fantasy VII in the PS2 version, but the deal fell through at the last minute. Due to Soul Calibur 2's success, guest characters became an important part of the series as a whole moving forward, leading to another attempt at console-exclusive incentives with Soul Calibur 4's inclusion of Darth Vader and Yoda in the PS3 and 360 versions, respectively, an attempt that the Force was much less strong with. Oh well, maybe they'll have more luck when they include Billy Ray Walrus in the next one. You heard it here first, everyone!